Hello, I'm Peter Mansbridge. On this final weekend before Canadians go to the polls, we wanted to offer an encore of our interviews done with the National Party leaders, exclusively for the National during the campaign. A couple of reminders first. On the day the election was called, all the parties were made a simultaneous offer. On a day of their choosing through the campaign, we would do an interview, either on the campaign trail or in the studio, either a traditional sit-down or a more informal day on the campaign. Their choice. In the next hour, we'll replay the highlights of the interviews in the order they were done. First up, Elizabeth May of the Green Party. This interview was done during her early campaign visit to Toronto. I want to start with first why we're actually in a campaign. If there'd been a Green Party in the House of Commons a month ago, would the Green Party have voted to bring the government down along with the other opposition parties?
Yes, I think that the way in which the Liberal resolution was worded around the issues of contempt and the fact that although Mr. Harper has shrugged off those incidents with win some, lose some, as many political scientists have noted, Professor Ned Franks, for instance, said it's not a question of win some, lose some. This is unprecedented levels of disrespect for our institutions of government, for parliamentary tradition. So we would have had to vote yes on that resolution.
In the 2.5-year life of the Parliament, would the Green Party ever have supported the Conservative Party?
That's a very good question. I think on some particular bills, possibly. But Mr. Harper has a way of putting the most egregiously damaging bills into things that don't ever come before Parliament for proper debate. This is one of the anti-democratic trends that concerns me a lot, is seeing the budget bill used. Of course, all budgets are confidence motions, and I don't know how many Canadians realize that the budget implementation bill in 2010 was 800 pages long. Most of it had nothing to do with the budget. It was gutting the environmental assessment process and so on. We would have stood up on that. The other parties were so fearful of an election that they allowed the budget process to be distorted and misused. I want to talk a little bit about your position in this campaign. Obviously, you put out your Green Party policy, which we've covered live, available on various websites, and we've done reports on it. And it's consistent, although updated from what Yes.
you did the last time. However, some things about your campaign are different, starting with where you're running. Is this the place you now is this the hill in which you stand or die on?
Yeah, well, let's look at the running in Central Canada. Again, as federal party leader, I believe that the Green Party will be taken seriously when we do things other federal parties do. And a newly elected leader of a federal political party traditionally seeks their first opportunity in a by-election. So I never said, gee, I think I'll move to London, Ontario. Stephen Harper called a by-election in London North Centre. I ran there and nearly won. And then I returned to my home base in Nova Scotia. My home base now is Saanich Gulf Islands. I don't see myself ever moving again.
You know, I've looked at that riding, and it's one of 12 ridings in the country where the winning candidate, and most of them were Conservatives, where the winning candidate's gap over the second place candidate, most of them Liberals, some NDP, was less than what the Green Party candidate received in that election, running distant. Is the Green Party actually helping Conservatives win seats when they're dragging votes primarily, not exclusively, but primarily from the Liberals and the NDP?
Well, as you'll recall, it was Stephen Harper who first told the consortium in 2008 that if I was included in the debates, he wouldn't come. So clearly the Conservatives don't think that the Greens are helping them out there on the hustings.
But what do you think?
I don't think that we should be so obsessively concerned with vote splitting. The crisis in our democracy is vote abandoning. The largest block of voters in 2008, the 41% of Canadians who stayed home, represented a larger group of voters than those who chose the Conservative Party or the Liberals or the NDP. You could just as easily argue that the NDP are in the way. We're in a multi-party system, and what we need to do is appeal to voters to believe that democracy can be better, that their representatives can make them proud, that there's hope and a positive vision for the future. And if all that the electorate hears is the constant squabbling, negativity, and partisan jabs of the old line parties, that large group of voters who stayed home is going to get larger. And I think really from the point of view of a healthy democracy, Greens need to be in the mix. Our voices need to be heard because we're the party that most appeals to people who otherwise won't vote at all.
How will you measure success when you look at the results on election night? What will be success for Elizabeth May?
Seats in the House of Commons for the Green Party of Canada.
Any number of seats?
Any number will do, including the number 1.
But seats more important than the number of votes? I mean, you're around 1 million votes last time.
Yeah.
But almost, what, 7% of the vote?
Yeah.
Do you have to reach that bar again, even before you start looking at seats?
Oh, of course. No, of course. We need to have as strong a measure of public support right across the country. We're running 308 candidates across the country. We're running a national campaign. Green voices in the House of Commons, from my point of view, are more important for rescuing Canadian democracy than from building the Green Party. It's more of a change that we need in our political culture that drives me than building a new political party.
Do you think it's a critical moment then for, obviously for yourself, but for the party itself in terms of having to have representation in the House of Commons now?
Well, the party will grow no matter what happens. I mean, we're really reaching out to people across the country. Winning a seat will certainly make a huge difference. My colleague Carolyn Lucas, who's the leader of the Green Party in the UK, has now proven by winning the seat in Brighton Pavilion in the last election in the UK that it's possible to elect Green Party members of Parliament in a first-past-the-post system. Until Carolyn Lucas did it in Brighton Pavilion, nobody else had done it. And where Greens have been in government, where we've made a difference in policy, it's always been Europe, New Zealand, Australia, South America, all the parts of the world, except for North America and England, that have adopted some form of proportional representation. So the obstacles in our system of electing MPs is substantial. We have to get through that, or over time people will say, well, the Greens are great as a vote to tell people something, to send a message. But we've got to send MPs. We've got to send voices to the House of Commons that are capable of changing the political culture, to end heckling and question period, to restore respect and civility to the way we work, and to embrace the idea of cooperation. The fact that Stephen Harper continues to demonize the notion of a coalition government or demonize the idea of cooperating with each other, that's what MPs are supposed to do in the public interest for the common good. So cooperation to us isn't a threat, it's the promise of better government.